All right, welcome back. Johnson Chukwu, the Chief Executive Officer at Cowry Assets Mgt, is back online with me. Mr. Chukwu, good morning to you. Welcome to COVID-19 Watch. How are you doing today? How is Lagos?
Well, Lagos is fine. We had a little drizzle this morning, but it wasn't a serious rain.
Oh.
Maybe it's a rain to indicate that the coronavirus we are about defeating it.
We also experienced the same in Abuja, at least. Yesterday it rained. It was also a bit windy last night. Let's quickly go ahead to our conversation. So many things to talk about. Like I did say at the beginning of the program, that lives and livelihoods matter, which the IMF chief also maintained yesterday when she had a joint news conference with the DG of WHO. I'm talking about IMF chief now, Kristalina Georgieva. She did mention three things which for me were takeaways yesterday. The first she mentioned is the world has never seen a crisis like this. The IMF has never seen a crisis like this. The world economy is on a standstill. She also did mention the second point, that emerging markets and developing countries will be the hardest hit, as we often have less and scarce resources to protect ourselves from just even one crisis, then let alone two crises, dual crisis, health and economic crisis. The third one, which you also mentioned yesterday, is that the IMF has a war chest of $1 trillion to bring the world together at this point, to use it to protect the economy from the scar. What are your views about this?
I think she was spot on those three areas. One, like the world has not seen anything close to this. Even this is the kind of global crisis we are witnessing now is worse than the two world wars where the world had witnessed. I mean, there was no time when the entire globe was locked down at the same time. At some point in the Second World War, it was more of a European war. Even when the US joined, the US economy was still running. A couple of other countries, Africa was barely scratched by the Second World War. So you realize that this is the first time where virtually every country in the world is affected. I mean, we've seen today, 6 billion Americans are staying at home. The top 10 economies of this world are all going through some difficulties. Now you talk of the smaller economies, or the 196 global economies in the world, virtually all of them have been affected in one way or the other. So the world has not seen anything close to this. She also was spot on the second aspect of her statement, which said that the crisis is so opportunistic that it sneaks in on the most vulnerable. If you look at what has happened in the countries that are affected most in terms of hate-wise, it's been killing mostly those with some pre-existing conditions or the elderly. Similarly, the economic crisis will be more severe on those countries that have underlying weaknesses like Nigeria. Those countries that are already finding it difficult to manage their economies will be most affected because, one, they don't have the reserve, two, they don't have the capacity to manage their wealth, their health situation, and three, they do not have, their earnings have been affected. Most of them are commodity exporting countries, and their earnings have been greatly affected. Again, they also do not have even the capacity to produce most of the critical medical supply you need to manage this crisis. And she also said they have a war chest of $1 trillion and they're ready to deploy that. That's, for me, is cheering news. And earlier, she had also said that there are about 90 countries that have applied for some support. I think Nigeria should quickly prepare to apply for some support because clearly we are among the most vulnerable countries in terms of our economic situation. And we shouldn't shy away from the fact that we need to seek for support as it stands today. Our crude prices, at best, we've seen yesterday was about $32, which is far below our initial benchmark. Last year, we struggled to balance, we couldn't balance our books with a $64 average crude oil price. Now we're talking about less than $30 crude oil price. Certainly, we're going to find it difficult to balance our books.
Okay, let's quickly go to the responses by different governments across Africa and perhaps taking Nigeria into cognizance. We're seeing that African governments are just beginning to organize their responses. They are still in early stages. For Nigeria, still in early stages. Private sector is also getting involved here. We have the CACOVID donations, that's the private sector coalition, against COVID-19, donating 19.4 billion naira so far. What are your sentiments concerning government's early stages of response as well as private sector?
You know, Nancy, you and I have discussed the government response severally. My take is that the government response was quite late and quite slow. And the earlier part of this pandemic, we did have a discussion on this, and we urged the government to wake up from the slumber and begin to respond appropriately. Today, we are now running after we are closing this and after the first had really escaped. As it stands today, we're beginning to see community infection, community transmission, and that's the greatest fear that we've always had, that we should actually nip this in the bud. At some point, we remember, I advocated that the government must quarantine all those who are coming in and not to ask them to stay at home, and if they fall sick, they should come and declare themselves or call whatever number they needed to call. If you recall, the case in Osun State is a case in point that is a proof of concept of what we should have done earlier. Those people who came in from Ivory Coast, had they been allowed to go to their individual homes, they would have affected entire communities. But because they were bussed and taken to a quarantine, that's why we're able to, the Osun State government were able to moderate the impact of that infection. If they had gone individually to their homes, you could imagine what would happen. And that's exactly what we've done. In terms of preparation, before I will move to the next question, in terms of preparation, look at the issue of going to distribute food to homes, to people in the market squares, and you see the number of people that gather to collect food items in those locations. What do you think will be the impact of if 2 or 3 of them are already infected, when you have to bring in 1,000 or more people, or even the case of sharing money to people? So those for me are indications that we are not prepared and we are responding, we are reacting instead of being proactive.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chukwu, for joining me this morning on COVID-19 Watch. I wish you a lovely weekend.
Thank you, same wishes.
Okay, I'm being told to go on a break, and when we come back, my colleague is still here, Tieve. He will be